Greetings, urban farmers, gardeners, and healthy food visionaries. Farmer Greg here, and welcome to the 460th episode of the Urban Farm Podcast, where every day we work together to educate and inspire you to become part of your food revolution. Summer is upon us here in Phoenix, and it's hot. With more people getting skin cancer these days, I'm not willing to take chances with the sun anymore. Before I introduce today's podcast guest, I want to share with you how I stay cool and comfortable working in the summer heat. My number one strategy is wearing lightweight, breezy, sun-protective clothing, like cool, moisture-wicking shirts and hats that shade my head, ears, and the back of my neck. I've partnered with Gemplers.com to handpick my personal favorite sun protective wear, and you can see them at Gemplers.com/urban farm. That's Gemplers, GEMPLERS.com/urban farm. When you use the code URBANFARM01, you get 20% off your first order. Heidi and I use these essential items on this list every day on the Urban Farm. Check them out and stay cool this summer. Superfoods like blueberries, sweet potatoes, turmeric, ginger, garlic, microgreens, and more are so full of nutrients, they are considered to be exceptionally healthy. Growing them is easy if you know what you're doing, and that's why I'm sharing with you the Superfood Garden Summit. In this free online event, you'll glean the secrets of visionary gardening experts and learn their best hacks. Plus, I will be presenting a talk on 3 keys to ultimate fruit tree success. Between presentations, get your questions answered with live Q&As and even win prizes. Did I already mention that this is happening online and it's free, so you can attend from anywhere? Learn more and reserve your spot at urbanfarm.org/superfood. Today on our podcast, we have someone who helps make the hatching of backyard chickens easy and fun. We're talking with Pascale Pearce about egg incubation for beginners. A native of France, Pascale is a graduate of Bordeaux Business School, where she earned an MBA specializing in international trade. In 1994, in the UK, she started as Brinsea's Export Manager and joined Brinsea USA in 1998, shortly after its creation, where she was in charge of business development. Brinsea is a family-run business offering bird breeding and veterinarian products. Established in 1996 by an engineer with an interest in breeding birds, it quickly became a passion, which, coupled with his background and enthusiasm, has produced the most innovative egg incubators and brooders available. With 25 years' experience in the breeding of birds and animal-intensive care, Pascale enjoys sharing her knowledge of incubation with backyard breeders to make hatching an enjoyable experience that they will want to repeat. Welcome to the show today, Pascale. Are you ready to rock hatching birds?
Absolutely.
Excellent. So I shared a bit about you. Can you fill in the blanks for us and share more about the path you took to get where you're at today?
Sure. Well, it started, with on the business angle of, international trade, and that's what brought me to the U.S. But, how I became basically the ambassador for Brinsea, the incubation specialist, sharing about, incubation and hatching eggs it became a passion, really. I find the process absolutely fascinating. I've always been a sort of a rural girl at heart, not at all a city girl, and the first time I hatched my own birds, it was just I thought an absolute fabulous experience, and I was completely hooked, and I just like to share that with anybody I can, really.
Nice. So did you start with Brinsea and then hatch birds, or did you hatch birds?
That's right, yes. I'd never hatched any birds before I started with Brinsea, and it's, one of the requirements, in a sense, is if anybody who joins Brinsea at whatever level has to go through the experience of, hatching their own birds. So I joined Brinsea back in, October of '94, and for Christmas, that was my gift. I had my own chicks.
Wow. So I have to tell you, when your firm reached out to me as a possibility to have you on our podcast, it's like, wow, hatching birds. I mean, I know that's where they come from, and I've kept birds here at the Urban Farm for over 20 years, but I've actually never hatched them. So it's got to be a fascinating process.
It certainly is. I mean, you can't beat that. And if you have, any children in the family, it's absolutely awesome to see their reaction as well. But, I still retain that, that wow factor. I haven't lost it. I don't think you lose it. It can become addictive.
So what is Brinsea known for?
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, we're the incubation specialists. That's for the last, 43 years. That's what we've focused on, designing egg incubators and chick brooders, and also, the accessories that go with the process of incubation, like egg candlers, etc. And that's what we focus on. I mean, it's, on the brooder side of things, there's obviously brooders for chickens and, this kind of, altricial birds. And then there's other types of brooders for the exotics and parrots, which have completely different requirements because they're not mobile when they start. And so that's been our entry into the animal intensive care, arena, because these types of brooders can also be used, for small mammals and, rescue centers, not just for birds, but also for small mammals. So,
oh, yes, of course. So you've mentioned two words that I want to distinguish here. You mentioned brooder and you mentioned incubator. Can you tell us what the difference is between them and why we would need them?
Yep. And sometimes they're sort of, mixed up. People refer to brooders as incubators, probably because of the baby incubators,
Mm-hmm.
But yes, I mean, strictly speaking, an incubator is a machine that you put the eggs in so that they hatch. So, and once they've hatched, you would transfer the birds into a brooder so that they would be brooded, like the mother hen would brood the chicks, keep them warm. And so these units are, little heat plates. I mean, you also have some hanging lamps, but they're a bit more dangerous, and I don't like them. But yes, there's various ways of keeping those hatched birds warm, and those are referred to as brooders.
Got it. So I'm actually on your website, Brinsea, BRINSEA.com, on the front page. And, I really had no idea that you had incubators that hold, about 6 or 8 eggs, all the way up to incubators that hold 580 eggs. So I guess
that's right.
This could be for the home, but it could also be for business. So tell me about that.
It is. I mean, now, bestseller is probably still, our tabletop units, yes, as you're right, starting with 7 eggs with our mini incubators, and then more recently introduced, probably about 3 years ago, a larger brother that holds 14, chicken eggs, and then, 28 and 56. I mean, these are more for the hobbyists. Backyard breeders. Then the cabinet incubators, our larger cabinet incubators, start from 100 eggs to 580 eggs. And yes, they're for the more serious breeder that's probably selling their birds. Or maybe even some hatching eggs, but and making a business of it rather than just pure enjoyment or conservation.
So why would I want to use an incubator rather than just leaving the eggs underneath the hen?
Well, I won't lie. A hen, if she is, broody and will sit on the eggs without destroying them, she's still the best incubator. So, but, there are factors. I mean, some birds will not sit. They will destroy their eggs, or there's also the factor of predation. There's a bunch of reasons why you would lose some eggs in the process if you let it happen, naturally.
Yeah. Well, and I've heard that we could even incubate eggs, and once they hatch at night, if you have a broody hen, put the chicks underneath the hen. Have you ever done anything like that?
Yes, but you've got to do it indeed very quickly, and better if she has some eggs that are close to hatching, because otherwise, if you time it wrongly, she has eggs that are halfway through incubation, and you introduce some chicks under her, she will abandon her nest because she says, "Oh, they've hatched and they're ready to go," and she won't. So yes, it can be done. It works pretty well if they're really day one hatches, just freshly hatched. I mean, obviously dried and fluffed up, otherwise they would chill and possibly die. But it can certainly be done. But you've got to get the timing right if she's got her own, clutch that she's sitting on.
Perfect. And what are the benefits of egg incubation?
Well, I guess control.
Oh, that's true.
Yes, you've got control over the process. You can observe it, certainly, candle the eggs, and hens don't take very kindly if you try, sort of looking at the eggs, sticking your hand in the nest is, at your own peril.
Yeah.
They're pretty protective, but yes, you can definitely see what's going on inside the eggs, and and obviously watch the eggs hatch.
Yeah. Well, that's a fascinating process, that's for sure.
Certainly is.
So you mentioned candling, and I'm on the front page of your website, and you have something called a egg scope. Is that that's pretty much the same thing, is it not?
Yes. I mean, candling comes from, when the ancient, Egyptians and Chinese would use candles to, see what was going on inside the egg, and the term has remained. Basically, the process involves shining a bright light to the large end of the egg where the air sac is, and then seeing what's going on. It needs to be done preferably to have good visibility in a darkened place, and our overscope, because it encases the egg, you can do it, anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great aid in classrooms when the teachers can project,
yes.
to the whole classroom. But so yes, basically, I mean, but an LED, at home, an LED flashlight works, really well. Go in a dark room, in a cupboard, wherever, and it works real good. LEDs, because they don't heat up, they don't warm up, the egg and disturb the embryo.
And what's the importance of doing this?
Well, you can see if the eggs are not developing, or if they started developing and died. That's even worse, because then if you leave them at 100 degrees or close to for 3 weeks, they're suddenly going to rot and possibly create a mess and contaminate the developing eggs. So basically, you want to starting day 5, day 7, you want to check on the progress and remove the eggs that are not doing anything, and candle them every 2-3 days, and check on the process. And those that are not that have quit, you certainly need to remove.
Yeah. Well, and just for the sake of saying it, we have to have fertile eggs to do this.
Yes, we take this for granted, but yes, you do have to have fertile eggs, and if you buy your eggs from most supermarkets, they're not going to hatch.
Right.
These poor hens have never seen a rooster.
So let's get started. What if I wanted to start incubating eggs and go through that process? Where do we start?
Right. Well, obviously, as we mentioned, fertile eggs are the first, requirement. Then obviously you're going to need an incubator. And there's a lot of incubators, wide range of products, ours, of course, but many other brands available on the market. So you can find, an incubator for around, $100. Mm-hmm. I would recommend an incubator with automatic turning. It certainly makes life easier.
Yes.
There are some, and eggs need to be turned at a minimum 3 times a day. The more the better. Automatically, they're usually turned every hour. It certainly increases the chances of a good hatch.
And why are we turning them?
Well, so that the air exchange, so the embryo doesn't stick in the same position, and, they could stick to the shell membranes, and also, as you rotate the eggs, it sort of, the air exchange happens better. Then it just moves the contents of the egg.
Kind of what the mom does.
Pretty much, yes, she will. She will turn the eggs periodically. It's not on a set timer, but she will certainly, stand up and move the eggs with her feet or her beak, and she will also leave the nest for small periods to forage and do what she needs to do. So, and people get very uptight about opening the incubator and sort of, panicking that, the eggs will cool very quickly if they, when they candle them, or if they need to replenish the water, or, and that's really not an issue.
Perfect. So I'm on your website, and because really you said you need fertile eggs and you need an incubator. It looks like you have, it's called a Mini 2 Advanced Fully Digital 7-Egg Incubator. That's probably a great place to start, right?
It is. It's an absolute winner. We sell a lot of those to beginners, a lot of them to schools. Basically, it's as, foolproof as you can make an incubator.
Uh-huh.
So it's preset. It controls the temperature at 99.5, which is, for chicken eggs and, turkeys, etc., that's the right temperature. Smaller eggs would need a slightly higher temperature, but, ducks and, chickens, 99.5. It rotates the eggs automatically every 45 minutes, actually. When the 2 days before the eggs are due to hatch, it will stop that turning automatically. So there's no...
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's a countdown. So, when you set your eggs, for chickens, it's 21 days. So you would enter 21 days, and it'll count down for that. And at day 2, it'll stop, so that, the eggs don't carry on rotating for the last 2 days, which basically sort of disorients the chicks and, would cause them to pip at the wrong end, and usually they don't make it. Usually they don't make it. So... And obviously there's a water reservoir which can be topped up from the outside without having to, to open the incubator. As I say, during incubation it's not so much of a problem opening the incubator, but at hatching time you need to have very high humidity so that the membranes don't dry out and the chicks get trapped. So having that external, water top-up is a great help. And that's pretty much it. Your job is to, make sure that the water is topped up every, 2 or 3 days, depending on, ambient conditions. And the incubator will do the rest.
Nice. So is there a certain time of year that's better to hatch?
Well, yes, springtime, obviously, because, the availability of the eggs. That's the time of year where, when birds will lay eggs, they will lay in good quantity, and the quality of those eggs is going to be better. Hatching, birds, when it gets too hot in the summer, they'll take a break, usually, especially here in Florida, it gets very hot. But other parts of the States as well. So they'll stop laying, then sometimes they'll resume in the fall. But in the winter, typically they will stop again because of the light levels falling and also the temperatures. They know it's not a good time to lay some eggs and to try and hatch some chicks. So, yes, springtime is better, but eggs now are, more readily available almost year-round. But if you don't have your own eggs and you're going to have eggs shipped from hatcheries, the chances are reduced. The hatch rates diminish, they get jolted and exposed to temperature differences in shipping, etc. And so, the hatch rates are not so great, but it's a good way of, trying different breeds, or, as I say, getting your own flock started if you don't have, a local source of eggs, or you want to try, some rarer breeds. So.
Yeah. Well, I know here in Arizona we have a Facebook page for chickens in the desert, so I'm sure that somebody could go to Facebook and see if there are any groups in your area that are poultry groups, and they may very well have eggs for you.
Absolutely, yes. The feed and seed stores are great resources. Obviously, companies like Tractor Supply or Ace Hardware, have chick days as well. So, you can certainly have access to, to eggs.
Yeah, I like Western Ranchman is our place here in Phoenix that's really good about that too. So we talked about having the incubator and managing the incubator. Are there any other supplies that we need for successful hatching?
Well, as I say, a candler, so it can be as simple as an LED flashlight or, even your cell phone.
Perfect.
So yes, that's it. And then once they've hatched, you will need, a means of keeping them warm. So It can be as, cheap and basic as, an infrared brooder. They are quite dangerous. Fire hazard, you need to make sure that they're very well secure, that they can't fall, and, they'll start fires. And sometimes they can also be, you can't control, they give out a lot of heat, which is not necessarily very beneficial for the chick. So, but that's probably, under $20, you have a way of keeping those chicks, warm. If you want to spend a little more, there are some heat plates. There's Brinsea, but there's other brands as well, and there's certainly I would recommend going there. A bit more expensive, probably around the $50 mark, but there's certainly more, they're safer, and certainly a more natural approach. The chicks adjust much better to the day-night cycle. There's not a bright light shining at them, or even a red glow day and night. It's they're not overheated, so you don't get the issues of what we refer to as the pasty bottoms. That's usually caused by by overheating. So the heat plates are definitely a better way to go. But if you can't afford or lay your hands on one of those locally, then the infrareds will have to do.
And you have a line called Eco Glow?
EcoGlow, yes, our brooders are called EcoGlow. We have 3 sizes, basically to match the sizes of our tabletop incubators. So, the smaller unit, the EcoGlow 600, is great for the 7 to 10 eggs for the minis, and then the 1200 is the intermediate size. That's great for up to 25 chicks, and then we've got the 2000, which will hold up to 50 chicks.
Wow, and basically what you're doing is you're keeping them warm like their mom would.
That's right. I mean, obviously, as they grow and grow their feathers, they're going to need the heat of the brooder less and less. I mean, they'll grow pretty quickly. I mean, for the first 2 weeks, definitely. I mean, first week is absolutely crucial, and then as they grow, up to 3 weeks to a month, depending on the outside condition, what season you're hatching. But once they're fully feathered, they certainly don't. They'll be too big to go under the brooder anymore,
right,
and they won't really need it. So
perfect. So we talked about the process a little bit, how long it takes, 21 days. Is there a development process that we should be aware of?
The time, 21 days for chickens. I mean, to give you an idea, for ducks and turkeys and guineas, it's 28 days. If you were to do pheasants or, partridges, about 24, quail, 18. So typically, the smaller the egg, the less time it takes to hatch. So yes, initially you won't be able to see anything in the egg. If you candle the egg before you put it in the incubator, and that's a good idea also, because, if an egg is cracked, you shouldn't set it in the incubator. Chances of it hatching are pretty remote, so don't want to waste time and space of the incubator on something that's not really likely to hatch. But if you candle that egg as you set it in the incubator, you're not going to see anything. I mean, it'll look like a store-bought egg, and that'll be it. There's a lot of people who wish that we could see, right at the beginning if an egg is fertile or not. That would, particularly, the commercial hatcheries, that would save them a lot of hassle. But so yes, as the days pass, the embryo is going to develop. So initially, around day, depending on the shell, if the shell of the egg is very clear, you'll have very good visibility, and maybe from day 3 or 4, you'd be able to see a little dot, and that will be, and sometimes it's pulsating because the heart is there, obviously, so that's the first thing that you would see, and some veins, radiating from that dark spot, which is, the embryo. And then it'll grow, usually on just one side of the egg initially, so up until day 7, 8, a little bit more, you'll see, obviously the embryo is getting larger and you see more blood vessels, but it's still very much located on one side of the egg. And then, by day 14, 15, usually, the blood vessels have gone right around, the egg, and the embryo is more sinking into the egg and, taking more and more space, obviously. And then it gets harder and harder to, when you candle the eggs, to really see any good definition like you were able to, in the early days. It's getting darker, but you'll definitely see a lot of movement. They don't like a bright light being shined at them, so they'll
Right.
twitch and try to move away. And that's a good sign that they're doing well. If they're not, then the definition of those blood vessels would, become more blurry, and as they would disintegrate. And, if you see a sort of a slushing mass inside your egg, then you can toss that one out. It's not doing. It started, but unfortunately, for whatever reason, it quit, and you shouldn't leave it in there.
And you should dispose of that in a very nose-sensitive way, because they'd be very smelly, right, if you broke it open?
Yes. Oh, yes. If you leave it too long, definitely, yes.
And how do I know we're done?
Your first cue is going to be that you're going to see a little break through the shell. That's really exciting. And yes, I mean, if you really haven't done so by then, you should definitely stop the turning. And but ideally you would have stopped the turning a couple of days before that happens. I mean, sometimes, if you're candling the eggs right up to day sort of, 18, 19, what you would see is actually the beak of the chick
yes.
that has poked into the air sac. And that would be, your cue if you're candling that, they are really getting ready to hatch.
Excellent. So all of a sudden we're, getting chicks hatching, they're breaking out of the shell. What happens next?
Well, takes longer. I mean, there's a lot of things, visibly people get very frustrated because, there's, that first break through the shell, and then, for 24 hours or so, nothing else happens. And, that's the most common call that we get at that stage is, what's going on? They're not hatching. And, there's a lot of things that need to happen. Basically, the blood circulation and the breathing needs to become internal instead of going through the egg membranes. It needs to, the chick needs to start breathing, through its own lungs. And that's the first thing that happens when they break through the air sac and then through the outside. But also the blood circulation, as I say, needs to go fully internal before they can go. And so that's what happened, for those 24 hours when visibly to us from the outside nothing is happening. And then they'll start cranking around the shell and make their way all the way around, and then in a final push, they'll sort of burst out of it completely wet and exhausted, and they've made it. And then they'll rest because that was hard work.
Yeah. So did I hear you correctly? Did you say that they'll crack the shell and then not finish the job for maybe 24 hours or so?
Well, you'll see between that first pip, that's what we call it, pipping, that first little break through the shell, until they start, cranking around the shell to break out, that's when that 24-hour or a little bit more happens. Yes. So once they start, moving around and chipping at the shell, that happens relatively quickly. Within, a few hours, they're out. But it's from that first tip until they start, cranking around. That's what takes, time, and that's when, people get concerned and impatient.
Excellent. All right, cool. Now they hatched. They're laying there because they're exhausted. We need to make sure that they have some source of heat. Brooder. Any other aftercare instructions?
Well, I mean, really, the main thing is once they've hatched, before you take them out of the incubator, they need to be dry and fluffy. Otherwise, they will chill. So, they're fine. The last thing that they've done is absorb the yolk sac, so they don't need any food or water, for up to 48 hours. that's when the hatcheries, ship them. So, and that's why they ship them at that stage. So they're fine to be in the incubator. It can look a little cramped, but, they're perfectly fine. And until they're dry and fluffy, you should leave them there. And then, put them under the brooder and monitor their behavior, really. I mean, they'll tell you if they're all huddled in a group and shivering, they are clearly cold, so you need to do something about it. On the other hand, if they're sort of all spread out and away from the heat source, then, they're overheating. Sometimes you'll see them panting as well if you've got it really wrong. So the water, and obviously once they're transferred to the brooder, they will need, water and, chick starter feed. And those should be not placed under, if you're using a heat lamp, the food and water should not be placed under the heat lamp. They should be, at the other end of the, of the brooder enclosure, the plastic crate that you're using. And plastic crates are, very convenient, can be easily cleaned because they do make a mess. Obviously with, wood chips, at the bottom, they certainly need a surface that's not slippery.
Yes.
Otherwise, they would develop splayed legs, which obviously is not a good outcome. So
perfect. Any other takeaways for home incubator first-timers?
Be patient and don't panic. I think we have first-timers tend to be, very nervous and trying to overthink everything. Take it easy. Whichever incubator, read the user manual. It's key. Each incubator is different. Each brand is different. As far as the recommendations of, not so much the temperature settings, because that's very common, but depending on the airflow in the incubator and the way the water pans are designed, each incubator or manufacturer has different recommendations to achieve the right level of humidity, which for incubation is around 45% humidity. So different ways of achieving that, but read the user manual, just set up the incubator, get familiar with it before you embark on the process, before you get your eggs. You never know, something could be going wrong, and then just enjoy it.
Enjoy the process. Where can people find your products at?
On our website, brinsea.com, but they can find us on, Amazon. There's a bunch of, other distributors, online and offline that, carry our products. Tractor Supply Company as well is one of them. So yes, they can be, they can do their research and find out which model is gonna work better for them.
Perfect. So that's Brinsea, BRINSEA.com.
That's correct.
Cool. And what kind of, before we started recording, you started telling me all of the incredible resources that you have on your website. Tell me about them.
Yes, so we have in a section under customer service, incubation advice, we have our incubation handbook. That's probably the main resource and absolutely great for first-timers. It's a PDF document that you can download and print. It's about 25 pages, and it covers all aspects and, it has troubleshooting tips of, what, things are going wrong. It's a brilliant start. But we also have, other articles about, how to store and handle the eggs before you set them in an incubator, if you have to, store them for a few days before you set them. Humidity in incubation, which can be tricky and is often misunderstood. So that's another great article about candling, and obviously afterwards about caring for the chicks. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff there.
Oh, there's an amazing amount of stuff there. So thank you for that. So I'm going to shift on you, and I'd like for you to talk about a time you failed, how you overcame that failure, and what you learned from it.
Well, I was talking earlier, I will keep this related to, to hatching and my own experience with, hatching, and that's one of the first times that I hatched, not the absolute first time, but one very soon after, where I just was so very impatient, and we were talking about the hatching right at the end, the hatching process when they pip and then nothing happens. this particular chick had been, stuck there to me for more than 24 hours, and others were, starting to crank around. Some had hatched, and I thought, well, clearly there's something wrong with this guy. I could still hear it. It was, it was still sort of breathing, etc. And I thought, well, he's stuck. I'm going to help him a bit. And I did, but clearly I was a bit premature because my intervention certainly didn't help, and unfortunately that little guy died. And that's where I learned that even with the best intentions, you can certainly do harm. And if I'd left him, he would probably, had made it in its own time and survived. So I felt really bad about that, and certainly have learned that lesson the hard way.
Be patient.
Be patient, yeah.
So what do you consider your biggest success?
Sharing this passion, which has become a passion for this process, and, helping people understand, what it involves, and, basically helping them along the way as much as I can. And, a lot of the time people get really, really hooked on it.
Yeah.
And also, sort of pass on that knowledge and that first experience, and that's very rewarding to me.
Yeah. Well, and I'll bet that you get a lot of input from people that you help. I know I do.
Absolutely.
In this podcast. Yeah, and that's really the bonus for me. How about you?
Absolutely, yes. No, I mean, creating a community around, obviously a shared interest, and tips, I mean, obviously we use our own incubators, but, our customers certainly use them, more than we do. And, we always welcome, feedback, negative or positive. We're always, trying to improve, our products and see what works and doesn't work, in the field. So, we have our own perspective, but certainly, welcome, anybody else's experience with it.
Yeah. And what drives you?
Well, that exactly. I mean, just designing, better products, just listening to, what people want and being able to deliver exactly that, products that are going to be, so easy to use that, a child can use it, for age, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Because, this passion, starts, very young in some people, and we certainly need to encourage it.
Yay. And one book for our listeners?
Well, I mean, I already mentioned our incubation handbook, so that's great. But we also have a book called Nests, Birds, and Incubators, which we co-authored with a PhD holder in England. And basically, our aim was to bridge the gap between, the research that's done at university level and how that can be. There's a lot of useful information that comes out of it, but they sort of operate in their own little bubble, and use language that's not so easy. There's a lot of statistics. There's a lot of and it's not very accessible to anybody. And, being able to translate those findings into something that would be useful to, a backyard, breeder was certainly a very rewarding, experience. I mean, obviously writing a book is an undertaking.
Oh, yes, that it is.
But sharing again, sharing that information, that side there, and sort of bridging the gap between the research and and the breeders, which is not done very often. So.
Right. And who's the author of that book?
It's Charles Deeming, D.C. Deeming, Deeming, and co-authored by Brinsea. Mm-hmm.
Nice. And I did just look for it on Amazon. It's pretty much not available on Amazon. You have to go to your website, brinsea.com.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Perfect. And what one final piece of advice do you have for our listeners?
I would say never, ever give up.
That is, it's classic and it's always appropriate. Always appropriate. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show today, Pascale.
Oh, you're most welcome. My pleasure.
So how can our listeners find out more about Brinsea?
Well, obviously, our website is probably the best resource, brinsea.com. They'll find out about our products, but also, all the resources that, they can use to make their incubation and hatching experience a success. And they can always, reach out to us by phone or email. We're here to help.
Perfect. You can also find show notes from today's podcast at urbanfarm.org/Brinsea. We are your urban farming resource. You can find us on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and everywhere podcasts are found. Also visit urbanfarm.org to find articles, webinars, courses, and more. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for joining us on the Urban Farm Podcast. Superfoods like blueberries, sweet potatoes, turmeric, ginger, garlic, microgreens, and more are so full of nutrients, they are considered to be exceptionally healthy. Growing them is easy if you know what you're doing, and that's why I'm sharing with you the Superfood Garden Summit. In this free online event, you'll glean the secrets of visionary gardening experts and learn their best hacks. Plus, I will be presenting a talk on 3 keys to ultimate fruit tree success. Between presentations, get your questions answered with live Q&As and even win prizes. Did I already mention that this is happening online and it's free, so you can attend from anywhere? Learn more and reserve your spot at urbanfarm.org/superfood.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Urban Farm Podcast. Remember to listen for tips, advice, and resources to help you on your journey with urban farming. You can find us on the web at urbanfarm.org or send us an email to podcast@urbanfarm.org. In the words of Vincent van Gogh, great things are done by a series of small things brought together. Be encouraged that with each lesson learned and skill developed, you are one step closer in the direction of your dreams.